You walk into a Starbucks on a Wednesday afternoon. You see 20 people. A man in a blue hoodie at the corner table, a woman with 2 children near the window, a college student typing on a laptop. You see all of them, and you process none of them. You are looking for an open table and a place to charge your phone. A Delta Force operator walks in behind you and sees the same 20 people. Within 3 seconds, he has identified the one most likely to attack the room, calculated the 2 fastest exits, located the closest improvised weapon, and decided which of the other patrons he could trust to help if something happened. The most dangerous person in any public space is rarely the loudest, the biggest, or the angriest. The most dangerous person is almost always the one trying to look invisible, and the act of trying to look invisible is the exact tell Delta operators are trained to see. There are 4 cues. Once you know them, you cannot unsee them in any crowded room for the rest of your life. To understand why Delta Force looks at people differently than everyone else, you have to understand what happens to candidates during the operator training course, not the selection phase, not the physical filters. What happens after selection, when the real rewiring begins? At Fort Bragg, the training pipeline for Delta operators is unlike anything else in the American military. Candidates who pass the grueling selection process enter the OTC, knowing they have earned their place. What they do not know yet is that the unit is about to dismantle the way they see the world and rebuild it from the ground up. Former operators describe this phase in consistent terms. It is not about shooting. It is not about fitness. It is psychological. It is perceptual. The cadre are not teaching skills. They are installing a new operating system for the human brain. One of the central pillars of that system is environmental threat assessment. Delta Force operators are trained to walk into any public space and conduct a silent, subconscious scan that takes less time than it takes most people to check their phone. The scan is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. And it is built on 4 specific behavioral cues that operators refer to collectively as pre-attack indicators. These are not theories. These are the observable, physical signals that human beings produce when they are preparing to do violence, regardless of culture, demographic, or location. Former cadre members confirm a counterintuitive pattern across every environment where this training has been applied. The signals are almost always present before an attack. The problem is that untrained observers do not know what they are looking for. The first cue is hands. Delta operators look at hands first, not faces, not clothing, hands. Within the first seconds of entering any space, a trained operator has already scanned the visible hand positions of everyone in the room. This is not accidental. It is the first rule taught at the OTC because it is the most reliable single indicator of immediate threat. Hands are where violence begins. What the hands are holding matters. What the hands are not holding matters more. In a coffee shop, most people have something in their hands at all times. A cup, a phone, a book, a bag strap. Human beings in relaxed social environments are almost never completely empty-handed and completely still. The hands want to do something. They fidget, they tap, they reach. This is normal. This is what baseline looks like. Picture a man at an airport terminal sitting with both hands resting flat on his knees, fingers slightly splayed, completely motionless, while the people around him scroll through phones and shift in their seats. That stillness is a deviation from baseline. Former operators say the hands-flat posture is one of the first things they scan for in any crowded space because it represents a body preparing itself, not a body at rest. Hidden hands are the highest priority signal of all. The single most reliable pre-attack indicator that Delta operators look for is hands that are concealed in an environment where everyone else's hands are visible. A person whose hands are tucked inside a jacket pocket, held behind the back, or kept below a table surface, while the room around them is open and visible has broken the social contract of the environment. In a relaxed public space, people do not hide their hands. There is no reason to. The act of concealment is itself the signal. It is not that the person is definitely a threat. It is that the concealment is anomalous, and anomalies are exactly what operators are trained to flag. There is also micro-tension in the hands that a trained eye can read from a distance. The knuckles of a gripping hand look different from the knuckles of a resting hand. The tendons in a forearm loaded with tension look different from a forearm that is slack. Delta operators have described this as learning to read the body the way a mechanic reads an engine. You are not listening for the big catastrophic sound. You are listening for the early tick that means something is building pressure. In 2017, security personnel at a European transit hub identified a suspect in a crowded departure lounge, not because of his clothing, not because of his behavior, and not because of any intelligence tip. They identified him because a single officer noticed that the man's right hand, buried inside a coat pocket, had not moved in 11 minutes. Everyone around him shifted weight, reached for bags, adjusted positions. His right hand never moved. When security approached, they found a concealed weapon. The attack never happened. One anomalous hand position, spotted in time. The second cue is stillness. Not nervousness, not agitation, stillness. This surprises people because the common image of a dangerous person in a crowd is someone who looks nervous, who is sweating, who is fidgeting. That image is largely wrong. Former Delta operators describe genuine pre-attack stillness as one of the most unnerving things they have ever observed in a human being. It is the stillness of a predator that has already decided what it is going to do. Most people in a crowded public space are in constant low-level motion. They check their phones every 90 seconds. They shift their weight. They sip drinks, cross and uncross their legs, glance around at other people, respond to noise and movement in their environment. This is social participation. This is what a person who belongs in a space looks like. They are connected to the environment around them because they are part of it. The dangerous person is watching, not participating. Picture a man at a supermarket checkout line who is not looking at his phone, not reading the magazine rack, not making casual eye contact with the cashier. He is looking at the door. He has been looking at the door for 4 minutes. He is not impatient. He is not distracted. He is monitoring. The baseline of a checkout line is low-grade social participation. People glance around. They exchange small talk. They respond to the space. This man has withdrawn from the space while remaining physically inside it. He has become a watcher in a room full of participants. That withdrawal is the signal. The answer is not that stillness itself is always dangerous. It is that stillness combined with environmental monitoring is the specific pattern operators flag. A person can be very still and be simply tired. A person can be very still and be simply introverted. But a person who is still, who is scanning exits, whose gaze moves in a deliberate pattern across the room, rather than the wandering casual glances of a bystander, that specific combination is what the operator training course teaches candidates to recognize from across a room without making it obvious they are looking. The training around stillness also covers the concept of the scanning pattern itself. Most people in a public space look at other people reactively. They look toward movement, toward sound, toward whatever catches the eye. A person conducting environmental surveillance looks differently. Their eyes move in a slow, methodical pattern that covers zones of the room rather than reacting to stimuli. Former operators say they can identify someone who is doing intentional environmental surveillance from the way their eyes move. It is too controlled, too systematic. It does not have the randomness of normal human attention. It is not that Delta operators are paranoid. It is that they have been trained to see the gap between what people show and what people are trying to hide. And once that gap becomes visible to you, you cannot stop seeing it in every coffee shop, every airport, every grocery store for the rest of your life. The stillness cue is one of the clearest windows into that gap. A person trying to look like they belong will often overcorrect into motionlessness because they are concentrating too hard on not doing the wrong thing. The result is someone who looks too still to be natural, too controlled to be casual, and that overcorrection is readable. The third cue is mismatched gear. This one is visible and learnable faster than the first two. Mismatched gear refers to clothing, bags, or equipment that does not fit the environment, the weather, or the person wearing it. A heavy jacket in summer. An ill-fitting shirt that hangs wrong over a concealed waistband. A single bag the person never sets down, never opens, never interacts with in the normal ways people interact with bags. Delta operators are trained to read clothing as a form of environmental data. In any given public space, there is a clothing baseline. People dress for the weather, they dress for the activity, they dress for the social context. Significant deviation from that baseline is a flag. It is not a conclusion. It is a data point that goes into the threat assessment alongside the other cues. The concealed weapon tell is one of the most consistently documented pre-attack behavioral signals in post-incident analysis. A person concealing a weapon at the waistband will often unconsciously touch or adjust that location. The gesture is small. A brush of the hand against the hip, a slight adjustment of the shirt, a hand that moves toward a specific spot on the body and then pulls away. Former operators call this a security touch. The person is not drawing the weapon, they are confirming it is still there. In relaxed social environments, people do not touch their hips. When someone does it repeatedly in a place where it has no social explanation, the pattern becomes visible. Bags that are never set down represent a specific category of mismatched gear. In any public space, people put down their bags. They put them under chairs, beside tables, on floors, on empty seats. This is universal behavior because carrying a bag continuously is uncomfortable and socially unnecessary. A person who never sets a bag down, who holds it consistently at a specific position on the body, and who reacts with visible tension when anyone comes close to it, has established an anomalous relationship with that bag. Multiple former cadre members confirm a counterintuitive pattern here. The people they flagged in training scenarios for bag behavior were almost never the people with the most obvious bags. They were the people whose relationship with the bag was wrong, too protective, too specific in how they held it, too resistant to the normal behavior of setting it down. Post-incident analysis of multiple public space attacks in the United States and Western Europe in the last decade has consistently shown that several of the attackers were identifiable in crowd footage by mismatched gear tells in the minutes before the attack. Heavy outer layers in warm weather, bags held against the body rather than slung or carried casually, clothing that visibly distorted at the waistband. These tells were present. They were not seen at the time because the observers were not trained to look for them. The fourth cue is what Delta operators call the greyman inversion. The greyman concept exists in special operations culture as a tactical skill. The greyman is someone who moves through public spaces without being noticed or remembered. The concept is real. The training is real. Delta operators and other special operations personnel learn to modulate their appearance, their movement, and their social behavior to reduce their observational signature in hostile environments. They learn to look ordinary, average, unremarkable. The inversion is this. When a genuine threat is using the same principle, the act of trying to look invisible becomes visible to a trained eye. Most people stand out by accident. The dangerous person stands out by trying not to. The distinction between genuine social invisibility and performed social invisibility is one of the more sophisticated skills developed in the OTC surveillance training component. Genuine social invisibility happens when a person is simply not doing anything that draws attention. They are in the room, they are participating at baseline levels, they are dressed appropriately, and nothing about their behavior creates contrast. Performed social invisibility has a quality of effort about it. The person is making choices. Every element of their appearance and behavior has been calibrated to say nothing, to mean nothing, to leave no impression. And that calibration, that conscious construction of ordinariness, creates its own signature. Former operators describe it as watching someone try too hard to be average. The clothing is average but deliberately so. The posture is neutral but maintained. The facial expression is calm but controlled. None of these individual elements are wrong. All of them together add up to a person who is performing the role of someone who belongs in a space, rather than simply being someone who belongs in a space. The performance itself is the tell. The greyman inversion also explains why profiling based on appearance or demographics is both tactically wrong and strategically counterproductive. Operators are not looking at what people look like. They are looking at the behavioral gap between what people are showing and what they are trying to hide. That gap can exist in any person, in any demographic, in any type of public space. The skill is in reading the gap, not in screening for a type. Within 3 seconds of entering a room, a trained operator has already run an unconscious threat assessment that combines all 4 of these cues simultaneously. Hands, stillness, gear, the greyman inversion. The assessment is not sequential. It is parallel processing developed through years of repetition in training environments designed to force the brain to make rapid threat assessments under stress and sleep deprivation at the Delta selection and OTC pipeline. The cadre do not teach candidates to think through the cues one at a time. They run candidates through enough scenarios that the 4-cue pattern becomes automatic, subconscious, and fast. The civilian application of this system does not require that level of training. The 80-20 principle applies here in a direct and useful way. 80% of the observable pre-attack signal in any public space comes from the first 20% of the training. You do not need to complete the operator training course. You do not need to develop the full automatic pattern recognition of an active Delta Force Special Operations soldier. You need to do one thing when you walk into any public space. Scan the hands first. Give yourself the first 10 seconds after entering a room to look at what people are doing with their hands and where their hands are. Do not stare. Do not be systematic in an obvious way. Just let your eyes move across the room and notice anyone whose hands are not visible, anyone whose hands are held in a specific guarded position for no social reason, and anyone whose hands are moving toward or away from a specific location on their body in a repeated pattern. After the hands, check for the person who is not participating. The one person who is watching, instead of being part of the environment. The one person whose eyes are moving through the room in a pattern rather than reacting to it. This scan takes seconds, not minutes. It does not require constant vigilance. It requires a brief recalibration of attention when you first enter a space. Former operators consistently describe this civilian application of threat awareness in terms of investment and return. The investment is approximately 30 seconds of attention when you walk into any new public environment. The return is an ongoing background awareness that takes no active effort after the initial scan. If nothing flags, you are done. You have established a baseline. Your brain continues to process environmental data passively. If something flags, you have the information you need to make decisions about where you position yourself, which exits you locate, and how you orient your attention for the duration of your time in that space. The lesson is not about being paranoid. It is about being calibrated. The operators who have spent careers moving through the most dangerous environments on Earth are not in a constant state of high alert. They are in a resting state of baseline awareness with a very well-developed ability to shift into threat assessment when the environment warrants it. That calibration, that ability to shift rather than sustain, is what prevents the burnout and hypervigilance that makes sustained security awareness impossible for most people. Delta Force training installs a pattern recognition system that identifies threats in crowded environments by reading what people are trying to hide rather than what they are openly displaying. That is the system. 4 cues: hands, stillness, mismatched gear, the greyman inversion. Not surface appearance, not demographics. The behavioral gap between presentation and reality. Once you understand that the system is reading the gap and not reading the person, the entire framework becomes portable to any environment and any context for the rest of your life. The next video on this channel breaks down what Delta Force operators do in the first 10 seconds after they identify a threat in a public space, and the specific decision tree they run through before they ever consider engaging. That video is on screen now. Subscribe to see more that reveals what really happens in the shadows of special operations. Not the Hollywood version, the actual version. The one former operators confirm only when the camera is off. Now that you know the 4 cues, hands, stillness, mismatched gear, and the greyman inversion, here is the question. Do you actually want to walk into every public space for the rest of your life seeing them? Or would you rather go back to not knowing? Tell me in the comments.